Hello.
Jess, congrats on the win. Just your thoughts on the match.
Yeah, happy to be through another 3-set match, but I played really well, I thought, towards the end of the second and into the third set, so happy that I was able to kind of flip my level and, get a win here.
Congrats on the win. I want to follow up on that. You had 42 winners, a crazy amount. I'm curious, was there something that kind of changed mentally that got you, to that point in the second? Or was it?
Yeah, I think to start the second, I kind of looked at my coach and I kind of knew that I had to obviously change things. One was definitely changing my serve, and then I think the second thing was just trying to play more up on the baseline. I felt like I was kind of waiting and letting the ball kind of come to me a bit, and center court I think plays a bit slower, a little bit bouncier, so I just felt a little off with my footwork, and I think once I started to try to confront the ball and stand up more on the baseline, everything kind of sped up for me, and I started playing much quicker, much faster, and that's my game, so I was able to kind of change that and execute.
I like that word choice of confront. That's fun. I wanted to ask about just starting on a Thursday, having Bally's here is relatively late. I'm not sure when you got into town, but just how is that? I think you had that last year here too, and you wound up losing your first match. So how do you adjust to kind of having one of the later starts?
Yeah, I didn't mind it because, like I kind of mentioned before, my prep wasn't exactly ideal. So I think for me, it was nice having a little extra day to get used to the conditions and the balls and everything. But it's tough because now you play, I'm first on tomorrow at 12, you're right back, you play every single day. I don't mind it. I think it's just a different setup, but I know there's been some talk possibly of maybe there's no buys for the top seeds, which I wouldn't mind either. I think it's hard as well, having to come out and play a girl that's possibly played a couple matches from qualifying or already played a match under her belt. You feel a little bit cold once you get out there. So, yeah, it's a different setup, but I think I've been kind of used to it a little bit by now.
Hey, Jess, well done. I wanted to follow up on what you were talking about, the on-court interview about playing Anna and how your matches are always just kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Curious, why do you think that is? I don't think it's a coincidence that that's happening, with the 3-set matches each time. But, and I guess to follow up on that, are there any other, opponents that you kind of I already know what I'm going to getting myself into?
Yeah, I think there's a few like that. Anna's definitely one of them. I've also had to play her quite a bit too, so that's always been tough. I don't know. I think I think she plays really well against top players. I think she plays really free. I think her record against top players shows that. But I do think that our games just match up where we kind of play into each other's games and tend to make it really hard for both of us. I don't know why that is. I think sometimes you just have those matchups, sometimes you don't. I think when I play Arena, we've always had some really tough matches, 3-setters. I think the same thing with Coco, just because we know each other's games so well. I would say someone here, I feel like it's always tough, is Samsonova. I've had a lot of tough 3-set matches with her. But Anna is definitely, because we've played so much, she's definitely the first one that comes to mind. Maybe Alexandrova as well. Her and Alexandrova, I'm sometimes they come at me early in the draw, and I tell my coach, I don't know if I'm mentally ready for this yet.
Hey, Jess, congrats on the win. Ben was in here a couple nights ago, and he was talking about the pressure that American players feel in the U.S., especially being a higher seed. I wanted to get your perspective on that as well, and if not just here, but collectively at tournaments in the U.S., if your mental approach differs at all.
Yeah, I don't know, if I feel that much pressure, just because there's so many of us that I do think we get a little bit of a break when one doesn't do well. There's usually another one in the draw that's able to kind of pick up the slack. So, I'm honestly kind of thankful that there's so many of us when I've been a top player, because I can imagine the pressure, maybe more of a Serena Venus type of situation, not just being already amazing champions, but then also coming into the U.S. swing as Americans, feeling okay, they're the ones that have to win the U.S. Open every single time. So I'm thankful I'm not the only one. I think that we all kind of share a bit of that pressure, which in my mind has been nice to alleviate some of it. So yeah, it's interesting that he feels it a lot. I think it's almost like we share it a bit, but there is a lot of talk about it because there's so many of us. I think we always get asked in press, oh, American tennis is doing so well. But maybe besides Coco, I think winning the French the last and winning US Open, like we're not winning every single slam, and there's a lot of us. So I do think sometimes I feel that pressure on all of us, kind of like, well, there's so many of you and you guys are all so good. Why are you not like winning every single slam? And I think that's where you feel some of the pressure. And obviously for the guys having to battle against like Yannick and Carlos and a lot of those guys, and now Zverev, it's probably it's harder, I think, for them.
I wanted to ask you about a topic that the guys seem to talk about a lot, which is the quality of the balls and possibly them getting worse over the last few years post-pandemic. Yes. Like Taylor Fritz will talk about this for hours, and yes. I haven't heard it being as much of a women's topic as much. But I'm curious for your own personal views for it, and then also just as a council representative, like if it's something that you think yes. WTA players are also concerned about.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about these freaking tennis balls, like till the cows come home, like. Oh my gosh. It's hard. It's just hard because, and you learn a lot about it. Like there's different manufacturers, so obviously in different countries, so different tournaments get the same ball, but it's from a different place that makes them, so it feels different. I think the surface of the court, and does it fit with the ball? Like sometimes the balls are okay, but you put it on a gritty court and they get really chewed up. The weather, sometimes it's really hot and humid, sometimes it's cooler, so that dictates whether they fly or they don't fly. Like there's so many variables, and even day to day how they change from it being like maybe cooler today but hot the other day. And so it's kind of like an impossible thing, it feels like, to solve. But I do think I've been more happy with the fact that we had like the Dunlop balls for a lot of the beginning of the year, so at least you just get used to one ball. I think where you get frustrated is where you're constantly changing, and I know at one point the men were playing with like 3 different balls in 3 weeks. Like that's crazy. Like you ask any other sport to kind of deal with that and they're like, are you joking? Like that wouldn't happen. So it sounds silly, but it does make a big difference. I think the girls we definitely do talk about it. I think a lot too with injuries, because maybe we're a little bit smaller, not as strong as the guys and stuff like that, you have seen them take a lot of data based off of when we had like the extra duty balls versus the regular duty balls, like were girls getting more injured. And I think there was actually more like wrist, shoulder, elbow complaints coming into the physios, blah, blah. So they're tracking a lot of that stuff. And I think player, obviously like the health is really the main concern. Like having to change a ball every single week is something your body's not used to as well. Is it a good change or is it a bad change? Are you seeing more injuries or less? Like there's so many factors that go into it. I'm hoping that we can just get to less changes and a more stable ball that hopefully is a better quality. Because I do think since probably COVID that the quality has gone down immensely. And I know US Open was also kind of working on something, I think maybe to try to use the same ball, because it's the only slam where the men and women don't use the same ball yet.
I was wondering, just on that COVID drop-off that people have pointed to, can you describe like what started feeling worse about the balls and how you notice them, and if it's still an issue when you like open a can of balls, you don't know what you're going to get?
I felt like this year it's been better again because we've stick to at least the Dunlop ball where it's been the same. I think every year around this time I do feel like there's a drop off a bit with the Wilson quality. One, because also when we're at home practicing and you buy them off the shelf, they're definitely not the same as like when you get to US Open. So also I'm not sure like if the tournaments are buying at the same time the Open does, because I know the Open, I think they actually order them like the year before. So I don't know, like, are those like the freshest out of the factory tennis balls? And then maybe here in Cincinnati and Toronto, they're using the same ball, but have they been sitting around for a year? Like I don't know. So there's a lot of those things where I think on council, like we try to narrow it down, like, okay, why does this feel different? What are all these factors happening? But to me, the main thing since COVID has been the quality. They just don't last. They get chewed up. They either get really super fluffy, they get really thin. They don't last. Like they don't play the same way as when you start. And I think we've also talked about, which I don't know if the men has changing balls sooner. Because if the quality's changed, I've always been a component, well then why don't we just change balls sooner? Like if we can't solve the ball problem, like the new balls to the old balls, it's like 2 different matches sometimes. So, I mean, that's, I think, also a big frustration with players. And I'm a fan of, I think instead of 7 and 9, it should be maybe 7 and 7. Like, I don't see why we can't do that. Or 5 and 7 or something. Like, and I don't know how the men feel about that, but at least you're getting like there's not as much variation in that ball that you're using. But then, of course, tournaments are like, well, we got to order X amount of more balls. So it's just the tennis ball conversation. I don't know. It's a lot, but.
Say that was very expansive.
I'm with Taylor. I could talk about tennis balls just unfortunately for a long time.
Want to ask on a lighter note. I am genuinely curious though. In your post-match interview, you acknowledged you played Anna in the semifinals 7 years ago, and you knew that. Maybe that was in the press notes. I don't know. But my question is, you've played hundreds of matches in your career. What's the recollection, or how well do you remember matches against opponents on surfaces going back years ago? Like what is that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, some are very distinct and I remember a lot, and then there's a lot that I don't remember. I think obviously deeper into a tournament, you remember those tournaments more because they're just kind of like bigger matches for you. I remember playing Anna. I remember we both weren't ranked very high. Obviously now we're much more established, like top players, but I think back then it was a really good opportunity for both of us to make the final that year. And I think it was probably the first time we played. I remember she was still dating Nick Kyrgios at the time, so he was sitting courtside, and I was like, this is so strange, like, what's going on? I remember that, and so you remember interesting things about certain matches. I think it just depends on the context a bit and what happened in that match. Like some straightforward matches, maybe I don't remember that much, but when there's, I don't know, an asterisk next to it for whatever reason, then you tend to remember it very vividly. Yeah. That's the year I won, yeah, when we played in the semis. Oh, yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. I think he had to, like, leave halfway through the match because it was, like, hot and he didn't want to be sitting out there, had to get ready. I don't know. I just remember that, like, it was funny. Thanks.